I think all drivers understand that they need all four wheels of their vehicle in perfect alignment for the car to perform properly and to maximize the tire life. If you're experiencing a drivability issue, such as your car pulls to the left or pulls to the right, or your steering wheel is not centered on your car when you're driving straight, or you notice premature tire wear in your tires, or maybe you've done some work to the suspension of your car, or possibly you've done like I did. The previous set of tires I had put on this car, I said, please do the alignment. I want to protect my investments. Okay, all these are good reasons to see the alignment shop. Unfortunately, people are reluctant due to the $100 plus cost of a service that they don't fully understand, so people often do not have this service performed, which leads to maybe 6 months or a year of life, and then your tires are all completely worn out. Okay, so my opinion is this service is worth way more than it actually costs. It is one of the most undervalued services in the industry, and like I said, if not having it done correctly, it will absolutely destroy your tires and not have your vehicle drive properly. What I find amazing about this service is that whether I have a modern all-wheel drive SUV like this one, or if I have a 1950s pickup truck, an alignment shop will pull your vehicle into the stall and will measure the exact same three primary angles on the front of both vehicles using the exact same method. If you have an all-wheel drive vehicle like this, or a front-wheel drive vehicle, or a rear-wheel drive vehicle like the Toyota here, with independent rear suspension, and 2 out of the 3 measurements that are measured in the front will also be measured in the back. Okay. Today's purpose of this video is to teach you how to measure the majority of these angles. Okay. For less than the cost of one trip to the alignment shop, today I'm going to teach you how, with very simple tools, to very accurately measure 2 out of the 3 angles on your car. Once you learn how to do this, the rest of your life, any car you own, your wife's car, your neighbor's car, your grandmother's car, anybody's car you can want, you can measure the majority of alignment of that vehicle. Okay. To begin with, though, I need to start out describing these angles to you and talk a few minutes about how they affect your car. Okay. The first and most primary angle that's going to be concerned with all cars is what we call toe. Okay. Toe is defined as the relationship of the front of the wheel and the rear of the wheel. Okay. If that wheel is straight ahead, forward, it is called zero toe. If the front of the wheel is pointed inward, that is called toe in. That's measured as positive on your alignment sheet. If the front of the wheel is pointed outward, that is called toe out. Imagine that. That is listed as negative number on your alignment sheet. All these measurements accurately are measured at the center line of the wheel. Okay, a lot of procedures to measure this that you will find on the internet do not measure at the center line of the wheel, therefore making them slightly inaccurate. Well, the engineer in me doesn't agree with that, so I'm going to show you the method that uses the center line of the wheel to show you very accurate measurements. This measurement is normally made in degrees. What you'll see on your alignment shop printout will be in degrees. In years past, from many different cars, this was listed in either inches or millimeters. Okay, very common to see it listed that way. At the end of all this, I'm going to give you the conversion rate of inches 2 degrees based on whatever wheel size you want. A very simple formula. You can calculate all of your measurements, okay? Now to understand toe, let's talk a little visual respect of this. What I actually have set up here, maybe a little difficult to see in the sunlight, but I actually have a string established on the outside of both sides of my car that is exactly parallel with the vehicle, okay? Parallel line is what this string represents. So when I come here and I view from the top of the wheel, if my wheel is straight, perfectly parallel with this string, straight in line, that will be 0 toe, okay? If the front of my tire is pointed in, that will be called toe in. If the front of the tire is pointed out, that will be called toe out. Majority of cars on the road are set with either 0 toe or slightly toe in. Excuse me, I almost wanted to say negative. That'd be incorrect. The reason for this slight toe in on tens of millions of cars for decades and decades and decades is because this measurement is made with the car at rest. When the car actually starts moving down the road, the natural deflection in the suspension will cause the suspension to move, and therefore your tire will now actually be driving straight down the road, okay? Seems weird that you're pointing the tire in. It's only because when we're moving, the tire will actually be traveling straight, okay? This exact same measurement is made on if you have an all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive with independent rear, is made in the rear of the car, okay? The same relationship to this line. Straight ahead would be 0 toe. The majority of most cars that have independent rear, this is set with a little bit of toe in, right? The same reason when you put on the gas, the rear end squats, making the tire be straight in line, okay? Pretty simple. Now what happens when we put too much toe, or it's not set correctly? Well, let's look at that. Let's say, for instance, I have too much toe in, okay? So even though my suspension is deflected as I'm moving, I'm still have the tire pointed inward in the front. Well, what's going to happen? Instead of my tire rolling freely and straight, it's actually going to be what we call scrubbing. It's actually going to be slightly sliding across the road surface, okay? Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going to happen to a rubber tire when it's sliding across asphalt and concrete. Toe being set wrong will absolutely destroy your tires in a very short amount of time. Destroy them, okay? Now, to understand a little bit more about this toe, on every single car, the front of the vehicle will have some toe adjustment. Every single car will have it in the front. Has to. When I say here most or some have it in the rear, that is because most front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, independent rear suspension cars will have some form of toe adjustment. If your car has a solid rear axle, then there's no toe measurement to even be made, and obviously there's no adjustment in the rear of those cars, okay? Like the Mustang, it's a solid rear axle. There's no measurement needed to be made for toe. There's no measurement, no way of adjusting toe, all right? Now, what happens with our toe when it's also set incorrectly other than just wearing out our tires? Okay, a few other things. If I have one side of my car with the toe too far in and one side set straight, when you're actually moving down the road, that car will balance to equalize the front tires, okay? What that's going to happen is going to make your steering wheel not be straight any longer as you actually feel like you're moving straight. And actually, your car is going to be slightly crooked traveling down the road. So not only is it going to be bad for your front tires, it's not going to be very good for your rear tires. Okay? If I have my one front toe set like this and the other toe set like this, one toe in, one toe out, your steering wheel is going to be way off center, and your car is going to be even more crooked driving down the road. Okay? So either way you look at it, toe is vital for all cars, especially the front. Exceptionally vital that we have our toes set correctly. The method I'm going to show you is going to be able to do this repeatedly on any car with any wheel. I don't care what kind of wheel spacers, offset wheels you use. I don't care. I'm going to show you how to measure this on all 4 tires. Okay? Our next angle is called camber. All right? Camber is defined as the relationship of the top of the wheel and the bottom of the wheel. Straight up and down wheel is 0 camber. Top of the wheel leaning inboard is negative camber. Top of the wheel leaning outboard is positive camber. Once again, measured at the center line of the wheel, usually in degrees. Okay. Now, to visualize camber and what it means, I can't give you a straight-on perfect inline look with the tire. It's impossible to do. But if you visualize the top and bottom of your tire, okay, being straight up and down, okay, straight up and down, perfectly level up and down, that's going to be 0 camber. If the top of my wheel is leaning inboard, that is negative camber, okay? The majority of cars on the front of the car have either 0 to a tiny bit of negative camber. Majority of cars. This is how they're set. Not all cars. Some cars have what we call positive camber, where the top of the tire is leaning out. You're going to see this in like pickup trucks. The reason is when you actually load the truck, the back end is going to go down and the front end is going to go up in the vehicle, which is going to cause the camber to go negative. If I set that camber initially at 0, when I loaded the pickup truck, the camber would go so far negative that the truck would become undrivable and unsafe. Okay, so we don't want that to happen, so we set it to what was not necessarily the best for performance of driving when it's unloaded, but we need that for when it is. Okay, the rear of, once again, all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, and anything with an independent rear suspension will also be able to measure that same camber angle in the rear. Okay, now on the rear of a car, you're typically going to see more negative camber than you do in the front. This is normal. Okay, this is to improve the handling of your rear end of the car, is mostly what this is for. Okay, it's not going to be excessive on the front or the rear on normal passenger cars. Okay, very few times you'll never see this set the rear. You're just never going to see it set with 0 or positive camber. It's not going to happen. Always going to be a little bit more negative camber in the rear. Now, what happens when we set too much camber, negative camber in this car? You see a lot of cars, the guys have this misconception that lots of negative camber will help the handling of your car. Well, if you're driving on a race course with taking tons of turns and this is your method of using the car, well, yes, negative camber helps you. If you're driving this car on public roads, especially in wet conditions, putting excessive camber into your car will become very dangerous, because what is actually happening, the more I tilt this car, okay, the more I am going to be riding on this inner edge of the tire. All it's going to do is absolutely wear out the inner edge of my tires from having that much camber, and it's also going to reduce the amount of surface area my tire is actually on the road, because I'm riding on that edge. If I'm driving in a straight line, there's very little of my tire touching the road. Okay, it's not safe. Driving a car with excessive camber down the freeway in the rain is not going to be a fun car. It's not going to be a safe car. Like I said, majority of cars, the front end is set with either 0 to just a slight negative camber. Okay. Now, the other problems we will find from camber, other than wearing out the tires from having it set incorrectly, are the differential between the left and the right side. Okay. If the difference between my camber on the left side is too much different than the right side, then the car will have a pull. Okay, it's going to pull. I can't tell you which side or the other. I'm not really worried about which way it is, but guaranteed if one side is set too different than the other, the car will pull either to the left or to the right. Now, lastly on camber, that's right here, it is adjustable on some vehicles for the front and the rear. And when I say some, I mean very, very few. Okay, very few that's adjustable. On a lot of cars, there are some aftermarket parts that you can add for the front. Could be as simple as a few $15 adjustment bolts that you can install on the car to be able to set your camber correctly. On other cars, like the Mustang, they're looking at more of a $200 cost of what they call caster camber plates to install on the upper strut mounts. On the rear of cars, once again, there's just nothing. On most cars, there is no adjustment at all on that. On independent rear suspension cars, there's no adjustment for camber. There are once again, there are aftermarket parts, like for this Honda, that actually require you to replace an entire suspension arm in your car with an adjustable component to be able to set the camber correct in the rear of that car. Okay, this is what it's going to take to fix it if you have an issue with that problem. There's no adjustability in that in most cars, just not available. Unless there's an aftermarket solution, the only option for fixing your camber, if it's incorrect, is going to be replacing components. Okay, bushings, suspension arms, struts, strut mounts, something of this nature is going to have to happen to fix your camber. So if you have a camber issue, I'll show you how to measure, and you don't know how to fix it yourself, that's fine, but you can measure it yourself until you have a camber issue. And your first option might be to go see a mechanic versus the alignment shop, because they cannot fix your problem most of the time. Some will offer you the aftermarket parts and help you fix your car. Some shops will not. Okay, it's just going to be dependent on the shop. Okay. All right, the last angle is called caster. This is the most elusive and most difficult to understand. It's really not that difficult, guys. It's defined as a line drawn through the upper and lower ball joints. Now, the alignment shop can measure this perfectly. We cannot accurately measure caster at home. You're not going to have the proper methodology to do this. I'm not going to get into how it's done. You can read how to do that if you're interested. The important part is we can't do it, but I will explain to you how it works. Okay. Now I've actually positioned the wheels of my car so that the spokes kind of represent. This spoke right here represents this caster angle. All right, the angle is always going to be leaning backwards to the back of your car. The top is always going to be leaning backwards. Okay. Straight up and down with that angle would be 0 caster. This direction would be positive caster. No cars are designed like that. All cars have positive caster. All of them. Okay. Positive caster gives us straight line steering stability. It also, when we turn the steering wheel and we release the steering wheel and it returns to center, that is because of this angle. Okay. If I increase my caster angle more, it will increase that return to center feel. It will give us more straight line steering stability as we're driving down the freeway. but it'll also make my steering harder to turn, my steering wheel, okay? So on older cars that did not have power steering, the other caster angles were set very low, okay? Because it was total arm power to move the steering wheel, and if I put too much caster, well, good gracious, you'd have to be He-Man to be able to turn your steering wheel, all right? So now you can understand why an old pickup truck with very low caster, which means very low straight line stability, also operating with positive camber, is not a very fun car to drive at 70 miles an hour down the freeway. It's not very stable, okay? It's just inherently not. Okay, so the other problem we have with caster is very similar to camber. If the difference between my caster is too much between one side and the other, guess what? That causes a pull in the car. Same way. And to further make that problem worse is the fact that there's virtually no cars that it's adjustable on. There's virtually no cars that there's even an aftermarket part for, except for, like I told you before, the plates that are available for a Mustang allow you to adjust camber and caster. There's nothing available on majority of modern cars to correct your caster other than replacing your suspension components that must be damaged. Okay, there's no other way of fixing it. Same thing, if you have a problem with your caster, I can't measure that for you. I can't show you how to measure it. But if you have that problem and the alignment shop gives you back your car and your car still has the same pull, well, take your specification sheet, your printout from the alignment shop, take it to your mechanic. He should easily be able to look and see that your casters are real wrong and determine for you what component needs to be replaced in your car. Okay, there's no other solution to fixing this problem, guys. There's no other solution. Okay, so now the important part of after all of this, like I said, is learning how to actually measure both the toe and the camber with high degree of accuracy at your home garage. Okay, it's really, when I show you how, it's going to be so easy and you're going to remember it for the rest of your life. Okay, I promise you. So let me just go over some real basic requirements before we do any type of alignment. We're always going to want to make sure we have the correct air pressure in our tires. It's good to have approximately half a tank of gas in your car just to simulate your normal driving. When you pull into your spot, you're going to measure your alignment. Pull in straight with a nice straight steering wheel, straight as you can hold it. Drive in gently and stop into your spot, okay? And most importantly of all, do not ever jack up your vehicle before you make your measurements. If you jack up the vehicle, there's no way you'll be able to set it back down on the ground, make any measurements, because there's no way for that suspension to settle. You're almost going to have to drive the car, pull it back into your spot, and then start over, okay? Do not jack up your car. All right, so measuring toe. This one, guys, I must have spent 25 years trying to figure this out. You know, I feel like an idiot to tell you that an engineer couldn't figure this out, but I'm a humble engineer. And once I figured this out, I just couldn't wait to try to share this information, hopefully in a simple way that everybody understands, okay? And all I have is 4 basic rules we have to follow. So, first rule is going to be a level floor. Okay? Real simple. Let's fix this in a window, blow it away. A level floor. For the measurements, to do all these measurements, I'm going to teach you the toe and the camber measurements we're going to make. This is all the tools I need right here. Literally all the tools I need. I'm going to use a decent laser level. Okay, these are readily available these days, almost anywhere at a very reasonable price. I need about 50 feet of a decent string. Find a string that has a nice, consistent outside diameter to it. That's going to help with your accuracy, making your measurements. Get a good quality tape measure with a nice wide blade and easy to read markings, okay? Once again, you're making a lot of measurements, gonna keep your mind straight when you're doing this, okay? I've worn out more tape measures in the last 40 years than I can even count, so I read these things like nobody's business, but you may not be as fast, and that's fine. Take your time, write all your measurements down as you go. Each measurement, write it down. Don't try to commit to memory, all right? The only other thing you can use later will be a scientific calculator. I'm going to go buy one of these for $5 at the convenience store. And there's one function we're going to be using on it. It's the, can't get a good focus. It's the inverse tangent function. Tan minus 1, what it looks like. That's the only function I need the calculator for. All right. So first is the level floor. That's our first rule. I'm going to show you how to do that with a laser level real fast. Okay. It's so easy. We're just going to take our laser level, sit it on top of something flat so it can make sure it itself levels. If your lines are blinking on your laser level, that means it's not self-leveling. You have to make sure you have a steady beam. That means you're good to go. And all I need to do, once I have that, is I can pull in my parking spot. I can mark the position of my 4 wheels and back out of the way. At that point, all I have to do is take my tape measure from the horizontal line here down to the ground at all 4 of my spots, okay? My smallest measurement is going to be my highest point. So I may have a need to shim up the other 3 wheels, okay? What's most important in doing this is that you get the side to side, your left to right, level as you can. Excuse me. That's going to be the most effect is going to be on camber. The front to rear level is really not too important, guys. I mean, you don't want to be severely off, but you could be ½ inch or 1 inch front to rear. It's really not going to make a difference. But left to right has got to be as equal as you can get it. And the easy way to accomplish that is when you're pulling back into your spot, okay? When you're pulling back in your spot, just before you get to your final spot, take a shim, whatever you're going to be using, and place it in front of your wheel, in front of your tire, and then drive up onto it. You cannot jack up the tire like the car, like I said a minute ago, and still expect it to settle. You have to drive up onto your shims. Okay? So that's a real easy way to figure out how to get your floor level, okay? The second rule means we're going to stretch 2 strings, okay? 2 strings just below the center line of the front and rear wheels, okay? What that means is I want you to have your strings positioned just below the center of your wheel. On all 4 wheels, I want it to look just like this, just below the center. The reason is when I come in here and measure to the center of my wheel with my tape measure, and I measure to the edges of my wheel to the string, the tape measure is not going to be touching my string, okay? Can't be doing measurements. You can't be touching the string with your tape measure. This will give you the room you need, making accurate measurements across the center line of all 4 wheels. All 4 wheels have your center line, your string just below the center line of the wheel. Third rule is the one that always screwed me up. This is what I didn't figure out. Keep your distance between the strings equal, meaning the distance between my 2 mounting points of my front strings is going to be equal to the distance between my rear strings, okay? Always equal, same distance. In my car, I'm using 70.5 inches between the 2 strings, okay? All you need to do is pick a number that's wider than your car. Usually 72 inches will work for a vast majority of cars. And the easy way to help make this easier for yourself is to take an 8-foot 2x4, put your tape measure on one end, come in about 1 foot, make a mark. Go down about 72 inches from there, make another mark. That will keep your distance between your strings equal, because all you have to do is put a screw in at each mark. You make a 2x4 like that for both the front and the rear, and that will be what you attach your strings to, okay? 4 marks, 72 inches apart on each 2x4 with a screw in at each mark. Tie your strings to them, okay? We have to keep this distance the same, front and rear, all the time. You don't have to use a 2x4. It just makes it a little easier setting this up the first time. The problem with using a 2x4 is that when you try to pull your strings tight, it just wants to fall off your jack stands. So my suggestion is, you see where my fingers are, put your jack stands about here and tape your 2x4 to your 2 jack stands. When you're actually trying to make the final adjustment of this process, you can slide both jack stands either to the left or right, okay? Whatever you need to do. Because that's what we're going to do to satisfy rule number 4, okay? Rule number 4 says, keep the distance between the strings to the center of both front and both rear wheels equal, okay? So I'm going to move the 2x4s and the jack stands either left or right until the distance between the center of my front left wheel to the string is equal to the distance from the center of my right front wheel to the string, okay? I'm going to adjust the front 2x4 to get those as equal as I can. Then I'm going to come to the back, and I'll do the same thing with the back 2x4, but this distance from the string, from the center of the rear wheel to the string, is going to be different than the front, okay? But what I'm going to do is make sure this distance on both left and right of the rear is equal, okay? It's going to take a couple times back and forth, moving each 2x4 to get both your rear measurements equal and both of your front measurements equal, okay? I can show you here real quickly on my car, try to show you that my distance to my string, okay, is 2 3/8 inches in the front, okay? It's a little hard for me to show you the angle of the tape measure all the time. You have to trust me a little bit when I'm telling you I'm reading off the correct numbers. I wouldn't lie to you. So when I do the same thing on the rear, on the right side, I get the same 2 3/8 inches to the center of my string, okay? That's what I'm doing. In the back, the front of this car is actually a wider track width than the rear. So that means it's more narrow. The rear is more narrow than the front. Most cars are actually like this. So my rear measurement here is actually between 2 9/16 and 2 5/8. I can show you. Okay, it's right between my 2 9/16. Excuse me, hard for me to get the right angle for you to see. 2 9/16 and 2 5/8. That's where I'm at. I come to the rear on the left. See if I can hold this right so you can see it. It'll be the same number. Okay, get right between 2 9/16 and 2 5/8. So I've established two perfectly parallel lines to my car. At this point, the rest is easy. You've done all the hard work. At this point, all I have to do is come in and measure the rear of my tire and, the rear of my wheel and the front of my wheel, okay? And all you got to do is subtract the difference between them, okay? This car is supposed to have a tiny bit of toe in on the rear. It's actually set at 0 right now. So I'm just going to try to show you. Once again, hard to see the exact angle. But right now, I can't touch my arm on it either. I'm just right between 2 and 2 1/16 in the front. And I'm exactly the same. I'm right on between 2 and 2 1/16. Okay. This is how you're going to measure all 4 of your wheels. You're going to measure the rear and the front. The difference of them will tell you what your toe is. Okay. Now, to measure camber is really even easier, guys. It doesn't get any easier with this method, and I feel it doesn't get any more accurate. Here we go. The method of measuring camber is very simple. I'm going to take my laser level and I'm going to shoot a vertical line parallel to my wheel. Okay, it doesn't even have to be perfectly parallel. It just has to be close. Then I'm going to measure the top and the bottom of my wheel. Difference is going to give me my camber. Okay, well, let's do this real quick and show you. It's really simple. I'm going to take my laser level and I'm going to place it to where it's parallel with my wheel. Okay, this doesn't have to be the same at all in any car. I'm basically trying to get it parallel. You need to move it a little bit, looks like parallel with my wheel. Okay, you can see it's almost parallel with my line. All right, a little off still. Close enough. If I want to make real sure that I'm perfectly parallel, I want to be absolutely perfect about this, I need to move the laser level back a little bit. Excuse me. I can simply, just like I'm measuring toe, I can see where the laser level crosses the line here, a little over 1 5/8. I can see where it crosses here, and oh my goodness, I set it up almost perfect. I'm just under 1 3/4. I want to be perfect. I can set the front and back perfect on my line. I'm telling you, what I just did there is more than close enough. At this point, all I need to do is measure the bottom of my wheel. Here I got right between 1 5/8 and 1 5/8 and 1 11/16. And also the top of my wheel. Here I got right at 1 3/4. Okay, so I'm a hair more than 1/16 of negative camber on this wheel. -1 inch would be absolutely perfect. I'm almost there. Okay, this is how you measure your camber. All 4 wheels. Simply shoot the laser level parallel to your wheel. Measure the bottom. Measure the top. Okay, it doesn't get any easier. It takes me about 2 minutes. I can measure all 4 wheels like this. So the biggest thing we have left to concern ourselves with, I'm going to move out of the sunlight real quick, is how do we convert those inches that I keep telling you about into degrees. Okay, it really, same thing as all the rest of this, guys. It's actually really simple. It's all going to revolve around this formula right here. Okay, what I'm actually showing you in this whole chart is the relationship of 1/16 of an inch. How much 1/16 of an inch equals in degrees based on size of your wheel. Okay, I have 17-inch wheels on my car, so my basis of measurement, 17-inch wheel, actual distance, excuse me, distance between my measuring points on my wheel are actually closer to 18.5 inches. Okay, 17-inch wheel, but the distance between measuring points is 18.5. I just simplified this at 18 to not make it more confusing. So 1/16 of an inch, a relationship of 1/16 of an inch difference between, say, top and bottom or front and rear of 18-inch wheel is a simple formula. And this is this: the inverse tangent of 1/16 of an inch divided by 18 inches. So whatever wheel you have, I don't care, makes no difference. Measure your distance between measuring points and substitute it for the 18 here. And that will show you how much 1/16 of an inch equals in degrees. So 1/16 of an inch is 0.20 degrees. Okay, I just showed you on the front of my car that the front is set just slightly more than 1/16, right? 1/16 is 12 minutes. The factory setting on my car is 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes is actually equal to 0.17 degrees. So 1/16 would literally be perfect. I'm just a shade more than that. I might be, I don't know, 16, 17 degrees at most. I mean minutes on the front there that I just showed you. I'm extremely close to the factory primary setting, okay? On the rear of my car, it requires 0.75 degrees or 45 minutes of negative camber, okay? So, well, 0.2 is 1/16. I need 0.75, so 4/16 or a 1/4 inch is 4 times this, so that's 0.8. 1/4 inch is almost exactly the proper setting for the rear camber in my car. Okay, so you see what I'm doing here. Whatever my setting is supposed to be, I can calculate it based on this very simple formula for any size wheels. This works for. Just substitute your distance between measuring points into 18. That's all you have to do. Okay, like I said, this works for both your camber and this works for your toe. The same exact formula. So whatever your degree statement is on your vehicle, you can convert to inches. You can even convert to millimeters if you just wanted to do it that way as well. Okay, I'm not going to be able to tell you what the specific settings on your car are, obviously. Every car is different. It's going to be up to you to research and know what they are. But knowing how to convert those into a measurable factor is what we need to know. All right, so guys, I know this is a lot of information, but like I said, I literally had to figure this out on my own because this vehicle left the alignment shop after I put that previous set of tires on it with the rear of the car set so horribly incorrect. It's shocking that they charged me to do that to my car. And in about 6 years and probably less than 20,000 miles, I destroyed all 4 tires on this car. And I decided I'm going to figure this out for myself. So I've actually done not only all the measurements, I've done all the settings of this entire car. And that's the only reason it looks like it does right now, what I'm showing you. None of this was correct if I just showed you what I started with. So it's a bit out of necessity. I taught myself to do this, and I'm very impressed. Wants to show you how. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Thank you so very much for watching. See ya.